responsibly.
On the list of greatest, stop you before you get to the line tackles. Number one, definitely Mike Jones when he won a Super Bowl. But Marshawn Lattimore last night won this game for New Orleans. Also, for everybody overreacting to Walker Buehler's pants last night, they're not too tight. They're totally normal pants. Get a new slam.
You got it from the Reali closet.
Hey, his were above the ankle. I mean I gotta get on that. They were high and tight. A game that came back from down 17 without Michael Thomas, who missed the game for punching a teammate, and Drew Brees had the "Is he done?" first half peanut gallery. It finished with very glass half full sound from Brees. Let's take a listen.
You know, we shouldn't have had to mount the comeback we had to mount in order to win this game tonight to overcome the 17-point deficit. You know, this is how you grow as a team. This is how you become battle tested, and I think it pays dividends as you move along here.
George, how do you hear Brees there, and how did you see Brees last night?
Tony, I think that Drew's onto something. Look, this is a big win for the Saints. Drew was 1-48 in his career when trailing by 17 points or more. So that is a big way to come back. And look, they are adapting to the new style of Drew Brees. He is not the quarterback he once was. I don't love the bringing in Taysom Hill all the time and throwing things up and changing things up. But it is something they have to adapt to because that's how they feel they are best suited to win.
You know, I went to the algorithm filter for you when you came up with that great stat, but 1-48, that's just kind of counting. There's no algorithm involved there. I'll give him mute. Israel Gutierrez, what did you hear from Brees after the game, and what did you see from him in the game?
Well, apparently battle-tested and coming apart at the seams are like right next to each other because they're like a field goal, a missed field goal, and a mixed extra point from coming apart at the seams and losing to the Chargers here. But what I will say is they can take a lot from this game just in terms of the direction that they're going. You look at Drew Brees going 7 of 9 on passes, 10-plus yards. That's kind of a big deal. And that big throw to Jared Cook there where he was wide open down the field. Another thing where it makes you say, hey, maybe the offense is opening up. Maybe Drew is being just a little bit better and more accurate looking down the field. You look at the running game there, and also just Taysom Hill getting a touchdown. Emmanuel Sanders. It took a while, but Emmanuel Sanders finally started rolling, getting a good sort of communication with Drew Brees. And you look at all that saying they get Michael Thomas back after a bye week. Yes, they should have been able to work out all the kinks.
That is glass half full from Gutierrez. Kevin Blackistone, what you saw from the Saints last night?
Well, I'll talk about the part of the glass that is not full, and that has to do with defense. I mean, one of the reasons for that 1-48 mark is because this was a team that was one of the greatest shows on turf for a while. They were always putting up massive points, and they were forcing other teams to chase them on the scoreboard. Now they're having to do this. They were down 14-0 against Detroit earlier this season, had to come back and win. They got a defense that's 26th in the league right now in terms of giving up points. They've got to tighten that up if they expect to be the type of playoff team that we've seen them be in previous.
And that's without even considering Brees. Can you talk to us about Brees real quick, Kevin? What you saw in the first half from him, that interception, and how he rebounded in the second half?
Yeah, well, obviously they made some adjustments in the second half. He was a lot more comfortable. It seemed like he had a little bit more time back there to move around. He was finding guys. But the thing about Drew Brees is he's not going to be the same Drew Brees at 41 that he was at 31. And so you got to make some adjustments about that. It looked like he got sacked very easily last night when he got sacked. I mean, he doesn't seem to me to be moving as well.
And now we'll bring in El Duncan.
Yeah, I'm going to give you like a total non-answer and say that I'm not ready to hit the panic button yet and compare him to 2015 Peyton Manning like the internet seems to want to be doing right now, because Drew Brees isn't at the point where he's having to crow hop just to muster up enough energy for a slant yet. And because Michael Thomas has played 4 quarters this entire season, like that's his favorite target. That's not insignificant, but for a team with Super Bowl aspirations, you should feel a little bit concerned about what you're seeing, because 2 of your 3 wins have come against against teams that are finding new and incredible ways to snatch defeat from the jaws of victory in the Lions and the Chargers. And if what you were looking for this year was to be able to take another step from some abysmal playoff losses, I'm not really seeing that right now, because one thing that Peyton Manning did have the benefit of when his skills were clearly diminishing and declining, he had a historic defense to help him out, and Drew Brees does not have
But
that
nobody's
benefit.
saying it's time to go to Jameis Winston or it's time to go to Taysom Hill more. I mean, I know people we know, people of our ilk, Mina Kimes, are whispering about Jameis Winston. All right, fine. You know, the difference between 3-2 and 1-4, in this case, not very much. Chargers side of the ball. One day they're going to win these games. It's going to be great. One day they're going to make these kicks. It's going to be great. But that aside, Justin Herbert, the first-round pick, 4 touchdown passes. How many, Tom Brady? 4. What are we seeing with Justin Herbert, Kevin Blackstone?
You see a guy that's living up to expectations that maybe a lot of people didn't have for him. We weren't expected to see him this early in his career. You're seeing him, and you're seeing him playing great. By the way, he's also doing this without some of his weapons. He's missing 2 guys on the offensive line. He's missing a running back, and he's still putting up numbers and putting up a clean sheet. 4 touchdowns, no interceptions. That's the most important part, and you just hope that they don't waste his talent by not having game plans that can pull them out of these close games at the end of the fourth.
Oh, the game plan is make the field goal. That's the game plan. Don't miss the extra
Exactly.
point. I mean,
Well, that's
and there's
true.
not much
That's
of a
true.
plan there. How about you, El Duncan? What did you see from Justin Herbert?
Yeah, super solid. He looks like he's got the goods. He looks like he's got the chops. In fact, he's been placed under a lot of pressure. And I think what we look for most when it comes to rookie quarterbacks is their decision making. And his decision making thus far, despite the fact there was a couple of throws last night that were YOLO throws, where you were like, what is happening? That's triple coverage. Oh my God, if the Saints secondary was any better, that would have been a pick. But I think he's second in the league right now in passing touchdowns when under pressure. He's tied with Patrick Mahomes and Russell Wilson. I'd say that's pretty good for a guy who has 4 starts.
Good piece of information there from Duncan. George Sedano, what are you seeing from Herbert?
Tony, he's big, he's 6'6", he's got a strong arm, he's very mobile. The big issue he's had, and this goes back to college, was accuracy. And I think at times we've seen some of these passes where maybe his receivers are bailing him out a little bit, but he's been fantastic. We're also in a golden age where these young guys, man, they've been playing quarterback at a very high level since they were little kids, like 7-on-7. Like, this stuff works itself out. It's a lot like AAU in basketball. They're treating these guys, particularly quarterbacks, differently than they did many years ago.
I'm happy to hear you say that. There are teams maybe in New York, Sam Darnold, Daniel Jones, that are wondering why that doesn't apply to them. Israel Gutierrez. Oh, yes, Washington, Dwayne Haskins. Israel Gutierrez, what did you see from Herbert?
You know, it's always good to know when you're in a golden age. You don't really know it until somebody announces it. It's kinda nice. What I see is
That's what I'm here for.
Savior already. He is a savior already, because we're not talking about the Chargers blowing 17-point leads like it's candy. We're not talking about the head coach's job right here. We're not talking about Michael Badgley, the kicker whose name we haven't even said yet, missing a couple of kicks and costing them a win. All we're talking about is Herbert in the future. So if you can sort of be the perfume for the stinkiness of the rest of your team, that's when you know you've got a good one.
You mentioned
one of the
Michael
ways.
Badgley. That's his name. Do you know what his nickname is, the kicker? The Money Badger. That is the nickname that he tried to lock down and trademark. You got to make those kicks if you want to be the Money Badger. We've been horrible. Moving on. Baseball. Atlanta-LA Game 2. First pitch is in an hour. Clayton Kershaw scratched back spasms. The 8-ball, that puts the Dodgers behind after last night when Walker Buehler could only go 5. Not because of circulation problems with his leg. The pads were fine. He could only go 5 in the bullpen. Well, they couldn't stop Atlanta from Atlanta-ing, which means something different per sport. Football, that's not a good thing. Atlanta-ing in baseball right now, they get it done late. So Tony Gonsolin moves up to start in Kershaw's place for LA. What does this do to the series? What does this do to the Dodgers, George?
So, Tony, I believe that for the Dodgers in the short term, I think it's going to be okay. I think I'm more worried about the long term with Clayton Kershaw. You're talking about a guy who's had multiple back injuries over the last several years and overcome that. But in the near term, Tony Gonsolin's been great for them, okay? They expected a start from him in this particular series. He has 46 strikeouts in 46 innings with a 2.31 ERA. This kid is legit. The problem is he had a sim game just 2 days ago because, again, they expected him to pitch later in the series. He's, in essence, going on short rest. But here's the thing about the Dodgers that ultimately will be the difference maker is their offense, okay? They've only scored 1 run twice this season, and not in consecutive games. Their offense needs to carry them here.
Gutierrez?
Yeah, I was just about to say that in terms of him pitching the simulated game there. What were we talking about with Clayton Kershaw? Hey, he needs to go 7, 8, 9 innings. Now you're talking about a guy who's coming in supposedly on short rest. He's dirty, but he's coming in on short rest, and you're not expecting it might end up being a bullpen game. And then what going forward? I think in the short term, it's quite the problem for the Dodgers.
You're talking about perfume in one story and being dirty in another story. Something you want to tell us, Israel? Kevin Blackistone, how about you?
Yeah, I'm perfectly clean.
Well, let's talk about cleaning that up, because what they need to clean up with the Dodgers right now is the closer situation. I mean, with the problems with Kelsey losing his velocity, being demoted as closer, turn into Blake Trinan, who we saw here in D.C. A while ago, not being able to get it done last night. It looked like they need to find someone who they can count on in that 9th inning to just get a few outs and to get out of the game with the W. And right now, I just don't know who that's going to be.
L, for you, the Braves. They've won every game they played this postseason. Last night it was Austin Riley. I didn't feel my legs rounding the bases, he said. He should see a doctor about that. But the 9th inning, go-ahead postseason home run. This team has been dominating late in games. What tipped last night?
Yeah, this is my point. I'm listening to all of you talk about this series, and all of you are talking about what the Dodgers need to do or have to do, or it's somehow an indictment on the Dodgers. It's the Braves. I understand they've been playing at noon every day, so no one's actually watched them play any games, but this is what they do. It's not Blake Trinan's fault. They've got 43 runs in the 9th inning or later out of their regular season and playoff. That's 43 runs in 65 games, I believe. That's the mark of why the Braves are currently here. I heard this sneaky himbo stat, the research god, that I think is indicative of what the Braves are doing right now. In the 5th inning or later, they are outscoring their opponents in the postseason 15-1, and pitchers have faced 103 batters, and one of them has crossed home plate. It's sheer dominance on both sides of the ball. This isn't Virginia versus UMBC, guys. These are the top two teams in the National League duking it out and making it a series, and that's exactly what they're doing. So let's not besmirch the Braves.
Stat Queen, L. Duncan. And last word, Israel Gutierrez.
A very 2020 Braves stat. Their starter today, Ian Anderson, never pitched in front of Major League Baseball fans. Today's going to be the first time.
11,000 people.
Pitched like nobody's watching. One more thing from last night, all right? This was awesome. Mark Melancon warming up to get the save for Atlanta and caught the Albies home run. He didn't move. Have you guys ever done anything that casual? No. This is so cool. We'll be back. Buy or sell in 2 minutes.
Around the Horn is presented by Samuel.
The Tampa Bay Rays recipe for wins. Get shutdown pitching from about 5 different guys. Get game-winning performances from a different offensive and defensive player every day, although yesterday was the same offensive and defensive player. Manny Margot. The home run was huge. The catch was physics-defying. Game 3, T-minus 3 hours. Are the Rays proving they're the better team, George Sedano? Buy or sell that?
Tony, I'm buying it. Despite the fact that the Astros are out hitting them in this series, they've only given up 3 earned runs. Their exit velocity, they're hitting the ball a ton. The exit velocity is well over 100 miles per hour. The Rays are a throwback here, man. They pitch well, they have timely hitting, and their defense is fantastic. Beyond Margot, you're looking at Adames, you're looking at Choi, you're looking at Wendell, all making fantastic plays in the field.
I'm looking at Gutierrez, as you named half the Rays roster very impressively. George Sedano and Israel, what would you like to share on Tampa?
I would like to share that Tampa's won these games, or Houston's lost 2 games by 3 runs. They've also had the bases loaded in the 8th inning or later, both of those games, and both times grounded into a double play. And you had the error from Altuve letting 3 runs in. I think they're okay. It's not really time to panic. They can recover.
Blackistone.
Well, I think the Tampa Bay Rays are the better team, but I could not take my eyes off of what the Astros are doing, so uncharacteristic of them. Altuve, this guy's a clean infielder, doing what he did, and not being able to get those runs in. 9th inning, bases loaded, no outs, and you can't get 1 run in?
Okay.
Stop.
Let's not use clean or dirty to describe, especially the Houston Astros. Let's go L. Duncan, please. This guy.
I totally agree with Blackstone and with Izzy here. I mean, this series is on like mushrooms, right? Altuve not only just one unforced error, but two on like really simple, arbitrary throws. And the Rays have struck out 13 times back-to-back games and still won the game. And if you go back to the Yankee series, 3 straight games where they've struck out at least 13 times. Nobody wins those games in postseason history.
You say that.
And to Izzy's point, they're leaving runners stranded. I don't want to take anything away from the Rays. They can rake, but I still
You just took everything away from the Rays. What are you talking about? All you did was talk about the Astros. You had all the stats for Atlanta. You had all the stats about them winning games late. You didn't have the stat for Tampa and what they do in one-run games. A third of their games this season have been one-run games. But I don't want to take anything away from you, El Duncan. We'll move on. Tuesday Night Football. Bills-Titans, the game. Weeks in the making. How the teams play after all that. How the Titans come out after their facility was closed 12 of the last 14 days. And 9 players unavailable tonight. Tennessee's gone 2 days without a positive test. That's why we're here. Can you even begin to answer those questions, Israel?
I mean, not really. When you have 13 players test positive, you have 9 players who aren't going to play. It's Mike Vrabel, if he wins this game, should be the leader for Coach of the Year early on. But it seems like a crazy mess for him to handle in one day. The Bills are a little bit more normal routine.
KB?
You know, generally, if a player doesn't practice at the end of the week, that player is not going to play when game time comes. Here you're talking about a team that basically hasn't practiced in a couple of weeks. How can you even think that they're going to be ready to win a football game?
This is not see the ball, be the ball. This is not basketball where you can take 2 weeks off. Like with as many injuries as we've had in the NFL because they didn't have a preseason, to assume that these guys after 2 weeks are going to be able to just walk and not only just play, but play one of the best teams and defenses in the NFL just seems insane. And honestly, I just hope that no one gets injured in the process.
George Sedano.
Tony, I'm selling the Titans and buying the Bills here. The continuity will be off for the Titans, you would think. And, of course, the Bills. Josh Allen is an MVP candidate, man. This guy is scoring touchdowns inside the 5-yard line at a 79% clip. Those are running back type numbers.
So that's a clean sweep. Everybody's got Buffalo. Not just because they're a good team, but also because Tennessee's really up against it. We'll move on. Buy or sell 3, Matt Ryan's future with the Falcons. Arthur Blank says it's not up to him. It'll be up to the next coach. El, this is Atlanta. You can start us off. Buy or sell?
Yeah, I'm totally and completely selling this because Arthur Blank already made the decision and he already hamstrung his next coach and GM because of that albatross contract that he gave Matt Ryan, who whether you let him go or not is going to count at least $45 or $40 million against the cap. So unless you think that you're going to be able to slum it down in the basement with the Jets and the Giants and try to make a play for Trevor Lawrence, you did this to them when you decided that Matt Schaub at 60 years old was your best option if Matt Ryan went down.
George Sedano.
Tony, I'm buying it. Matt Ryan has had a stretch this season of 27 consecutive drives without a touchdown passing the ball. You just can't do that when you're paying a guy $47 million or whatever they're paying him.
Seeing Matt Schaub as the backup is a what year is this type of situation because I did not expect him to still be there. Look, every time Matt Ryan throws the ball 10, 15 yards down the field, it's like an adventure. I think his days are done. He's not very mobile. Can't really move on from him because of the money, but it's time to move on.
Kevin Blackstone.
But you know, Arthur Blank's not going to come out and say, whoa, I made a mistake giving this guy all this money. I expect him to say what he said about Matt Ryan. That's been his guy. And he's absolutely right. There will be a new coach, as we well know, and that coach will make the decision on who the next quarterback is.
Man, you guys have a hair trigger on calling quarterbacks done. Matt Ryan, I mean, he's not where Brady and Breeze are years-wise. You would have met. No, okay. And you're right, El. The interesting thing, unlike the Patriots who drafted a quarterback behind Brady for like 5 years of the last 10, Atlanta's never done that. We're going to say goodbye right now to
Flub. Savor the flavor responsibly. Part of Happy Hour.
Have the New York Jets put Le'Veon Bell on the trade block? Manish Mehta, Daily News reports Bell liked a post that called out how the Jets have been underutilizing him in the passing game this week. That caught the attention of Coach Adam Gase, who assessed it in his media availability. But there's a lot of water under this bridge. So, Israel, did Bell just get put on the trade block because of liking a tweet? And is there a trade market for Le'Veon Bell this time around?
Well, I think there would be a trade market for him. And if you go back in Adam Gase's history, he doesn't really like players who speak up. It's definitely not who speak up against him. I definitely believe that played a part in it.
Yeah, I don't think that it has to do with that. I think it has to do with the fact that Le'Veon Bell doesn't exactly contribute to that Jets offense, and Adam Gase doesn't like him. I would say at this point, put him on the NFL's version of eBay and see what you can get. 7th rounder?
You mentioned the Jets offense. What proof do we have there is a Jets offense, El? That being said, I agree with you. Point. Duncan will move on. Showdown to the Indianapolis Colts. Say they are not worried about quarterback Phillip Rivers. After pick 6, intentional grounding safety, and pick on Sunday, El, should they be?
Yeah, Frank Reich has had to walk back the fact that Phillip Rivers was interception heavy in the Chargers because they were always losing. He's had to walk back the idea that Phillip Rivers isn't his biggest issue. He'll walk this back too.
Look, if you have that defense, what you want is a quarterback who doesn't turn it over. Doesn't have to be spectacular, just don't turn it over. Phillip Rivers doing the wrong thing.
Are you saying you want a game manager as for Gutierrez? It sounds like you're saying you want a game manager. It's not going to get you the win. 30 seconds of FaceTime, El Duncan. Congrats.
All right, I want to give a shout out to Megan Duggan.